The crisp winter air bit at Sarah's cheeks as she trudged slowly through the snow-covered cemetery. Christmas morning had arrived, but there was no joy in her heart, only the weight of absence. Every step crunched softly under her boots, echoing in the silent rows of tombstones. She paused at each grave, her gloved hands trembling as she brushed the thin layer of snow from the engraved names of her parents and younger brother. The cold seeped into her bones, but it was nothing compared to the emptiness she carried inside. Years of celebrating the holidays with her family had ended abruptly, leaving Sarah alone with memories that now felt like ghosts. She bent over the oldest grave, her breath fogging in the icy air, and whispered, "Merry Christmas. I wish you were here." Her voice barely rose above the wind, and even she could barely hear it. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she blinked them away, determined not to let the sadness overwhelm her. There was a ritual in tending these graves every year, a small act that reminded her that she still had a connection, however fragile, to those she loved. The cemetery was quiet except for the occasional rustle of tree branches and the faint jingling of the old church bell in the distance. Sarah hugged herself, wishing she could feel warmth in more than just her hands. She remembered last Christmas, the laughter, the gifts, the smell of cinnamon and pine, and the feeling of togetherness. It was a stark contrast to this morning, where the world seemed muted, colorless, and indifferent to her sorrow. People were celebrating elsewhere, enjoying feasts, families, and laughter. Here, she was invisible, a solitary figure among headstones dusted with frost. Despite the cold, she lingered, placing small ornaments and fresh holly on each grave. It was her way of honoring the past and keeping the memories alive. The wind picked up, swirling snow around her feet, and she shivered, wishing she had someone to share this quiet, sacred moment. She didn't expect anyone to come, not here, not now. But even in the stillness, a subtle sense of being watched prickled her awareness. She glanced up from the grave and saw a figure in the distance, walking slowly toward her along the narrow path. For a moment, she froze, unsure if she should be alarmed. But something in the posture of the man, the way he moved with deliberate care, the gentleness in his approach, was not threatening. His presence was steady, like a warm ray of sunlight cutting through the cold morning. Sarah's heart, so long accustomed to loneliness, skipped a beat. Perhaps, she thought, Christmas could still bring surprises. Perhaps, even in the quietest moments of sorrow, hope could arrive unannounced. Jackson had been riding along the back roads of his Texas ranch when he noticed a solitary figure moving slowly through the cemetery. The sight was unusual, even for him, a man accustomed to quiet fields and long stretches of land. But something about her presence, the careful, deliberate movements, the small gestures of care, caught his attention. He pulled his truck to the edge of the snow-covered path and stepped out, boots crunching against the frozen ground. At first, he hesitated, unsure whether to intrude. But the instinct to approach, to offer kindness where it seemed needed, propelled him forward. As he drew closer, he saw the woman kneeling by a grave, brushing snow off the name etched into the stone. Her shoulders were tense, and her gloved hands trembled slightly. The wind tugged at her scarf and hair, but she seemed unaware of anything beyond her task. Jackson cleared his throat softly. "Excuse me," he said, his voice warm and steady, carrying across the crisp air. She jumped slightly, startled, and for a moment, her eyes widened in surprise. Then, slowly, she looked up at him, and he could see the faint trace of tears glistening in her eyes. I'm sorry," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't hear you coming." "You don't need to apologize," Jackson replied gently. "I just wanted to make sure you're all right. It's a cold day to be out here alone." There was no condescension in his tone, no pity, only genuine concern. That simple, unassuming acknowledgement of her solitude brought an unexpected comfort. Sarah hesitated, then nodded, unsure how to respond. There was a kindness in his presence that didn't demand explanation or justification. Jackson knelt briefly at a distance, watching as she carefully arranged small holly sprigs on the graves. "It's beautiful, what you're doing," he said after a moment. "I've driven past this cemetery many times, but I've never seen anyone care for it like this." Sarah blinked, touched that someone noticed, that someone cared. For so long, she had felt invisible, her grief contained within her own quiet routine. His words offered a small crack of warmth in the cold, a reminder that human connection still existed, even in unexpected places. They began to talk, slowly at first, cautiously. Sarah shared stories of her family, of Christmases that once brimmed with laughter, of the emptiness that followed their loss. Jackson listened, speaking only to offer gentle encouragement, to nod in understanding. Then he shared a little of his own life, of his ranch, the long hours, the responsibility of managing land that had been in his family for generations, and the quiet loneliness that sometimes accompanied it. Their conversation was slow, deliberate, filled with pauses that felt natural rather than awkward. By the time the morning sun rose higher, casting golden light across the snow, a fragile bond had begun to form. Two strangers, brought together by circumstance and grief, discovered a shared understanding. Neither could erase the pain of the past, but for the first time that morning, Sarah felt seen. And Jackson realized that sometimes, offering companionship could be the most powerful gift of all. The snow continued to fall softly as Sarah and Jackson walked side by side along the narrow paths between the graves. Each step they took left deep imprints in the pristine white, a quiet reminder that they were not alone in the cold morning. The air was still except for the occasional rustle of branches overhead and the distant toll of the church bell, marking the passage of time. Sarah felt a warmth she hadn't expected, one that wasn't from the sunlight or her thick coat, but from simply having someone beside her who listened without judgment. Jackson moved carefully, giving her space yet staying close enough to offer silent support. He didn't rush her or fill the quiet with unnecessary chatter. Instead, he allowed her words to flow freely. She spoke of her parents, of the way her father's laughter had once filled the farmhouse, of the little traditions her mother insisted upon every Christmas. She told him about her younger brother, whose boundless energy had once made the holidays bright, and the emptiness that remained after their sudden loss. Each story came with a mix of tears and smiles, memories that were both bitter and sweet. Jackson shared fragments of his own life as well, revealing the solitude that often accompanied wealth. Managing the vast ranch had kept him busy, yet despite the bustling activity, there was a loneliness he rarely spoke about. He talked about his childhood winters, helping his father with chores, the long nights spent staring at the stars above the open fields, and the quiet longing for connection. Sarah listened intently, realizing that grief could take many forms, and that sometimes, even those who seemed strong carried invisible burdens. As they moved deeper into the cemetery, they found a bench partially hidden by a grove of evergreens. Snow had accumulated on its surface, but they brushed it away and sat together, their conversation slowing into comfortable silence. Snowflakes drifted lazily around them, some landing on their coats, others melting in the warmth of shared presence. Sarah felt her chest loosen, the tension she had carried for years easing slightly. The act of speaking, of being heard, was already beginning to mend invisible fractures in her heart. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They simply watched the snow, the cemetery transforming from a place of sorrow to one of quiet reflection and gentle healing. There was an unspoken understanding between them. Grief was still there, a part of their lives, but it no longer had to be faced alone. Laughter bubbled up unexpectedly at a small memory Sarah recalled, and Jackson joined in, his smile bright against the muted landscape. It was a rare moment of lightness, a reminder that even amidst loss, joy could resurface. By the time the sun began its slow descent, casting a warm glow across the frozen grounds, Sarah realized she no longer felt completely alone. Jackson's presence had brought a new kind of comfort, one that required no explanation or apology. The connection between them, fragile yet promising, had turned the cemetery into a space of hope. For the first time in many Christmases, Sarah felt a quiet anticipation for the days ahead, the possibility that healing was not only possible but already beginning. The late afternoon sun dipped low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the snow-blanketed cemetery. Sarah and Jackson rose from the bench, brushing the snow from their coats, the cold air tingling on their cheeks. There was a quiet understanding between them now, an unspoken promise that neither had to carry their burdens alone. The walk back along the winding paths felt lighter, each step more deliberate, as if the snow beneath their feet symbolized a fresh start. Sarah's heart, so long weighed down by grief, now held a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years: hope. Jackson stayed close, his presence steady and reassuring. He spoke little, allowing the silence to be comfortable, even restorative. Sometimes he gestured toward the horizon, where the ranchland stretched beyond the town, golden under the setting sun. Sarah listened, absorbing the stillness and warmth in his voice, a contrast to the sharp edges of loss she had carried alone. For the first time in a long while, she felt understood, not pitied, not rushed, but genuinely seen. That recognition was powerful, more healing than she could have anticipated. They paused near the edge of the cemetery where the path met the road. The graves behind them were now adorned with fresh holly and simple decorations, small symbols of remembrance that felt sacred. Sarah looked back, taking a deep breath, her chest feeling lighter than it had in years. She realized that while the pain of loss remained, it no longer defined her Christmas. The companionship she had found today had carved a new space in her heart, one where grief and healing could coexist. Jackson extended a hand toward her, a gesture of support and partnership. "Come," he said gently. "Let's head back. You don't have to face the holidays alone." Sarah hesitated for only a moment before taking his hand, the warmth of his palm grounding her. The simple act of holding someone's hand, of stepping forward together, felt like a declaration of resilience. Each footprint they left in the snow behind them marked not just a path through the cemetery, but a path toward a life where connection could flourish even amidst sorrow. As they approached the road, the lights of the nearby town began to twinkle, reflected in the snow like tiny stars. Sarah thought of the future, the holidays to come, the quiet moments and the laughter that might return, the possibility of shared memories with someone who understood her loss. Jackson spoke softly about the ranch, the warmth of the hearth, and the simple pleasures of life beyond grief. His words painted a picture of companionship, not just for a moment, but for the days that lay ahead. By the time they reached the town's edge, night had fallen, and the sky was filled with stars. Sarah felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Christmas had arrived, not with the brightness of celebration or gift-laden tables, but with the quiet miracle of human connection. She looked at Jackson, gratitude and a subtle smile warming her face. They walked side by side, hearts lighter, knowing that the holiday had given them something neither expected: healing, hope, and the promise of togetherness. The cemetery behind them remained a place of remembrance, but the world ahead now held possibility, companionship, and a renewed faith in joy.